When the war ended, the VT fuse was still classified. The public never knew that London had been saved. Not by luck or miracle, but by a tiny device born in a lab in Maryland. Only months later, the U.S. War Department revealed the truth, calling it one of the most important weapons of World War II, surpassed in effect only by the atomic bomb. But Dr. Merle Tuva, the quiet scientist who led the project, never saw it as a weapon. He called it a proof of democracy. Where Germany relied on fear, hierarchy, and forced labor, America relied on cooperation. Scientists, engineers, factory workers, each contributing a piece of something greater than themselves. The VT fuse didn't replace courage. It multiplied it. It didn't destroy. It defended. And its legacy still echoes today in every radar-guided missile, every smart defense system, every circuit that thinks before it acts. In 1944, a shell that could sense its target rewrote the rules of war forever. And the world learned that sometimes the quietest ideas make the loudest impact. For 80 endless days, London trembled beneath the sound of a new kind of terror. It wasn't bombs dropped from planes this time. It was something faster, colder, and far more impersonal. The Germans called it the Vergeltungswaffe, Eins the V-1, the vengeance weapon. Each carried a ton of explosives and flew at nearly 400 miles per hour, its pulse jet engine roaring like a mechanical heartbeat in the sky. And then, one day, the sound would stop. Every Londoner knew what that meant. Silence. A few seconds of dreadful quiet. Then impact. Houses shattered, streets vanished, lives erased. It was a weapon built to destroy not just buildings, but hope itself. Yet, unknown to the world, salvation was already on its way. A device no larger than a man's hand, born not from the battlefield, but from a laboratory across the ocean. A device so advanced that German scientists had already called it impossible. 1 week after D-Day, as Allied soldiers clawed their way through the hedgerows of Normandy, Adolf Hitler unleashed his revenge. At 4:15 a.m. on June 13, 1944, a single unmanned craft roared across the English Channel. It struck a railway bridge in London. 6 dead, 30 wounded, 200 homeless. The message was clear. Germany had found a way to strike back. To the German High Command, the V-1 was a symbol of rebirth, the world's first cruise missile. A triumph of pure engineering, a machine that could fly itself to its target. Major General Walter Dornberger, father of Germany's secret weapons program, called it the future of war. Each V-1 cost less than a fighter plane and carried more explosives than an entire bomber crew could deliver. No pilots to lose, no risk, no mercy. The scientists at Peenemünde were certain, even if only a quarter of their missiles got through, they would rain more destruction on London than the Luftwaffe had managed in the entire Blitz. They believed interception was impossible. The numbers, they said, proved it. To them, the V-1 wasn't just a weapon, it was a statement. Germany still ruled the laws of physics. By late June 1944, the skies over southern England had turned into a nightmare. Every night, the same dreadful rhythm. A low, mechanical roar in the distance. Then closer, louder, like an angry swarm of metal bees. Londoners called them buzz bombs. Children learned to tell the sound apart from airplanes. When the buzzing stopped, they had only seconds to take cover. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. It meant the engine had cut out. It meant death was falling. Entire streets were flattened in an instant. The British Home Office stopped reporting exact numbers of casualties. They feared panic more than bombs. To the people of London, the war that had seemed almost won was suddenly back crueler, colder, and without warning. For the scientists in Berlin, the data looked perfect. Every impact was proof their mathematics were right. But in the ruins of London, no one cared about equations. They only cared about surviving until morning. By early July, strange reports reached Berlin. Observers along the French coast watched in disbelief as Vogt's second, flying perfectly straight, suddenly exploded mid-air. No fighters nearby. No visible anti-aircraft bursts hitting them. Something was destroying the missiles without even touching them. Oberst Max Wachtel, commander of the V-1 campaign, was furious. He suspected sabotage or a design flaw. He grounded launch units, inspected engines, even fired test missiles over German soil. Every one performed flawlessly. The failures, it seemed, happened only over England. Something new was waiting for them across the channel, a weapon the Germans didn't believe could exist. The Allies called it the VT fuze, short for variable time fuze, a deliberately misleading name for something far more advanced. Inside the tip of each artillery shell, American scientists had hidden a miracle, a tiny radio transmitter and receiver that could sense when it was close to its target. The fuse sent out radio waves, and when those waves bounced off metal like the skin of a V-1, it triggered instant detonation. No timer, no guesswork. For the first time in history, a shell could think for itself. In 1942, the U.S. Navy gave the impossible task to a group of quiet geniuses at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory. Their mission: build a fuse small enough to fit inside a 5-inch shell, smart enough to detect its target, and strong enough to survive being fired from a gun. Every physicist in Europe had said it couldn't be done. They were wrong. Dr. Merle Tuve and his team didn't just build it, they industrialized it. They borrowed techniques from hearing aid manufacturers to miniaturize vacuum tubes, sealed them in wax and plastic to survive 20,000 Gs of acceleration, and created a tiny glass battery that activated itself the instant a shell was fired. Across America, ordinary factories transformed overnight. Crosley, once a radio company, now produced 16,000 fuses every day. Sylvania Electric's engineers reinforced microscopic filaments by hand. Over 100 plants took part, each one building just a small piece, never knowing the full picture. They didn't have to. They were building victory one component at a time. By mid-1944, America was producing 40,000 VT fuses a day and shipping them straight to Britain. The weapon that couldn't exist was now rolling off assembly lines faster than the Germans could launch their missiles. By late August 1944, Britain had quietly rebuilt its defenses. Thousands of anti-aircraft guns were moved to the southern coast, forming a narrow, deadly corridor called the Diver Belt. Every V-1 heading for London would have to pass through it. And now, every shell they faced carried an American VT fuse. The gunners waited. Then, on a gray morning, radar screens came alive. Dozens of blips, crossing the channel at 400 miles an hour. The SCR-584 radar locked on automatically, feeding coordinates directly to the guns below. For the first time, humans no longer had to aim. The machines did. All the crews had to do was load and fire. And they did. The sky erupted in flashes. Shells burst not at random, but precisely near their targets. To the Germans, watching from across the water, it looked like magic. V-1 second flying straight and level, then suddenly erupting into fire. By the end of that single day, 82% of Hitler's vengeance weapons had fallen into the sea. London was saved by a fuse that could think. When the reports reached Berlin, disbelief turned into panic. Oberst Max Wachtel, commander of the V-1 campaign, refused to believe the statistics. 82% losses in one day? Impossible. He ordered every launch site inspected, every crew interrogated, every missile retested. No defects. The engines were perfect, the guidance flawless. And yet, over England, they simply vanished. The conclusion was unthinkable. The Allies had invented something beyond German science. At Peenemünde, the engineers gathered around the data. Some whispered of new radar tricks, others suspected magnetic fields. But no one dared to say what they were all thinking, that the British had somehow created a shell that knew where its target was. It was madness. No machine could survive the shock of being fired from a gun and still function. Their own laboratories had proven it. To the scientists who once claimed mastery over physics, it was a humiliation. They had mocked the impossible, and now the impossible was destroying them. The most astonishing part of the story is that the Germans never discovered what hit them. Not one intact VT fuse was ever recovered during the V-1 campaign. Every gun position using them was carefully placed, so that any unexploded shell would fall harmlessly into the sea. The British called this the Diver Belt. To German intelligence, it was just geography. To history, it was one of the cleverest deceptions of the war. Even when pieces of strange circuitry were found in fragments, scientists dismissed them as radar shrapnel or fakes. The truth stayed hidden behind layers of secrecy. In late 1944, fate played one final joke. During the Battle of the Bulge, German forces overran an American ammunition depot and captured hundreds of artillery shells. Each one carried a VT fuse in its nose. They had the answer to their greatest mystery, literally in their hands. But because their own experts had declared such a device impossible, they never even examined them. They stored them, untested, in a warehouse, then lost them again when the Allies counterattacked. It was irony at its cruelest. The perfect weapon hidden in plain sight, ignored by those who needed it most. By September 1944, Hitler's vengeance campaign was finished. Out of more than 9,500 volts one flying bombs launched at Britain, barely a quarter ever reached their targets. The rest had been destroyed, not by new planes or secret fighters, but by a tiny radio circuit inside a shell. The statistics were staggering. Before the VT fuse, it took 2,500 shells to shoot down a single flying bomb. After it, only 100. The improvement was so dramatic that General Frederick Pyle, head of Britain's anti-aircraft command, later said without it, London's casualties would have been 4 times higher. Tens of thousands of lives saved by an invention no bigger than a coffee mug. In the factories of Ohio, New Jersey, and Maryland, 22 million of these fuses rolled off the lines. Each one a fusion of science and sweat of engineers, factory workers, and dreamers. And when the Germans were finally shown a captured VT fuse after the war, they stood in stunned silence. They couldn't understand how it survived firing, how it functioned at all. They simply admitted the truth. They had not been outfought. They had been outthought.